Good morning, everyone. Last week, we left Zarathustra at a fascinating peak, didn't we? After 10 years of solitude, he was filled with this overflowing wisdom, a veritable fire he resolved to carry down to humanity, a gift. And his motivation, he declared quite boldly, a desire to
give presents and distribute, until the wise among human beings have again become happy in their folly, and the poor happy in their wealth.
Now, this profound resolution to go under, much like the sun, immediately faces its first and perhaps most telling test. We're diving into Prologue, Part 2 today. And this encounter, it's pivotal.
It forces Zarathustra, right at the outset, to begin refining his understanding of his mission, to question the very nature of his gift, and to confront the immense challenge of communicating transformative wisdom. Especially in a world that might not even recognize the terms of his transformation. Think about that. It's a passage, like so much of Nietzsche, that has sparked a century of debate, a fascinating kaleidoscope of interpretations.
From early Lebens Philosophie readings, through the intense lenses of existentialism and post-structuralism, all the way to more recent analytic and virtue-ethical engagements. What we'll see today is Nietzsche's signature narrative philosophy in full swing. We'll witness dialogic engagement, an emerging critique of traditional religious values, and it all culminates in one of his most famous and, let's be honest, often profoundly misunderstood pronouncements. What could that be? So, Zarathustra descends. Picture this.
Zarathustra climbed down alone from the mountains and encountered no one. But when he came to the woods, suddenly an old man stood before him, who had left his saintly hut in search of roots in the woods.
This old man, a saint, an Ansiedler in German, a term that whispers not just of spiritual withdrawal, but also of a certain eccentricity, a detachment. He recognizes Zarathustra instantly, yet he notes a profound change. He says,
"This wanderer is no stranger to me. Many years ago he passed by here. Zarathustra he was called, but he is transformed."
The saint's words immediately throw our first key concept into sharp relief: transformation. But what kind of transformation has Zarathustra undergone? The saint offers a striking, almost poetic metaphorical contrast.
"Back then you carried your ashes to the mountain. Would you now carry your fire into the valley? Do you not fear the arsonist's punishment?"
Here, Nietzsche unleashes his narrative philosophy and truly potent symbolism. The mountain, it's solitude, isn't it? A place of withdrawal, perhaps purification, where Zarathustra previously carried his ashes. Ashes, suggesting a past self, maybe burnt out, a renunciation, or simply the remnants of a former life. But now, he intends to carry fire into the valley, the bustling, complex realm of human society. This fire, it clearly connects to his overflowing wisdom from Prologue 1, that sun-like, irrepressible need to bestow. Yet, fire is also dangerous. Transformative, yes, but demanding and potentially destructive. The saint's question, "Do you not fear the arsonist's punishment?" It immediately introduces the peril, the sheer risk of Zarathustra's undertaking. It hints at the inevitable societal resistance to such a radical, fiery gift. This, right here, is our first deep dive into narrative philosophy and symbolism. Consider this. What do these powerful symbols, ashes, fire, mountain, valley, really tell us about Zarathustra's journey, about the nature of his wisdom, even before he elaborates on it himself? How does this rich imagery establish the stakes, the sheer audacity of his return? And perhaps more unsettlingly, how might this fire be perceived by those accustomed only to the flickering, dim lamps of conventional wisdom? When we approach such symbolism in Nietzsche,
It's absolutely crucial, a methodological imperative really, to read these images not as mere literary decoration. No, they are integral to his philosophical articulation. The very form enacts the philosophical content, challenging us, compelling us to interpret layers upon layers of meaning, all condensed within these powerful metaphors. The saint continues his observation, detailing the nature of this striking transformation.
Yes, I recognize Zarathustra. His eyes are pure, and no disgust is visible around his mouth. Does he not stride like a dancer?
And then, even more profoundly,
Zarathustra is transformed. Zarathustra has become a child. An awakened one is Zarathustra. What do you want now among the sleepers?
child and awakened one. These terms are absolutely loaded with significance. For Nietzsche, the child often symbolizes a new beginning, innocence, creativity, a resounding yes-saying to life itself, themes that will become utterly central to Zarathustra's teachings. From a Jungian perspective, for instance, this child aspect resonates powerfully with the child archetype. It symbolizes new beginnings, true spontaneity, and a deep connection to the creative unconscious, all absolutely essential for the individuating ego to break free from collective norms, to awaken from the slumber of the sleepers, and to forge entirely new paths. The awakened one among sleepers. This establishes a recurring, vital motif. Zarathustra possesses a clarity, an insight that others simply lack. It's hard not to hear strong echoes of Plato's allegory of the cave, is it not? Where the philosopher, having seen the sun, the truth, returns to the cave to enlighten the prisoners, who are, in a very real sense, asleep to reality. The saint's question, "What do you want now among the sleepers?" carries a distinct note of skepticism, perhaps even a touch of pity. He then adds, almost mournfully, unquote,
You lived in your solitude as if in the sea, and the sea carried you. Alas, you want to climb ashore? Alas, you want to drag your own body again?
This implies a profoundly ascetic worldview, a perspective where engagement with the world, even with one's own physicality, drag your own body again. What a phrase. Drag your own body again. What a phrase. The sea, vast and self-contained, supported him. The shore, society, is a place of struggle, of friction. This feels like a natural moment to catch our breath and synthesize. What do we have so far? Zarathustra, utterly transformed by solitude, intending to bring his fire to humanity. And who does he meet? A figure representing an older wisdom, one that recognizes his change, yes, but deeply questions his purpose. A figure who frames engagement as a burden, a risk. The stage, my friends, is well and truly set for a confrontation of worldviews. And this dialogic form, for Nietzsche, is crucial because it enacts his perspectivism. Meaning doesn't just appear, it emerges from the clash, the juxtaposition of these distinct worldviews, rather than from some dry, monologic exposition. Indeed, this commitment to perspectivism means we shouldn't necessarily be looking for a single victor in dialogues like this. Instead, we should ask, how does the interplay itself illuminate the philosophical problem from multiple, often irreconcilable, standpoints? Fascinating, isn't it? Zarathustra's response to the saint's probing, it's simple, direct, almost startlingly so.
I love mankind.
Or, more precisely in the original German, Ich liebe die Menschen. I love human beings. There's an immediacy to this phrasing, isn't there? A connection to concrete individuals that the more abstract mankind can sometimes obscure. And this declaration, recalling his driving motivation from Prologue 1, immediately becomes a point of sharp contention. The saint counters, and his words are chilling.
Why? Asked the saint. did I go into the woods and the wilderness in the first place? Was it not because I loved mankind all too much? Now I love God. Human beings I do not love. Human beings are too imperfect a thing for me. Love for human beings would kill me.
Notice the saint's language here, that powerful German. Der Mensch ist mir in a too unvollkommener Sache. The human being is too imperfect a thing for me. A thing. This highlights an almost reified, contemptuous view of human creatureliness. And this sentiment? It connects directly, almost palpably, to the broader sweeping critique of Christian morality and asceticism that we find woven throughout Nietzsche's entire corpus. Think particularly of On the Genealogy of Morality, where this kind of world-renouncing piety, born from a perceived imperfection of the worldly, is a central target of his trenchant analysis. So, here we encounter a stark, almost brutal contrast in the very concept of love and its proper object. Zarathustra's love for dimension is an affirmative, an outwardly directed impulse, a reaching out. The saint's path, it's one of retreat, born from a love for humanity that he found, quite literally, unbearable due to its imperfection. He has redirected his love towards God, a presumably perfect, unchanging object, finding direct love for humans not just difficult, but destructive. This is such a crucial moment for understanding the dialogic method Nietzsche so masterfully employs. He isn't just stating Zarathustra's view, he's testing it, sharpening it, refining it, through powerful opposition. Let's engage with this method ourselves. Just for a moment, think about this. What are the core assumptions, the unspoken bedrock, underlying the saint's argument for loving God instead of humans? And conversely, what might Zarathustra's love of mankind truly entail if it's to overcome such profound objections? How does this sharp disagreement begin to clarify the unique, perhaps even radical, nature of Zarathustra's project? Especially when we consider the saint's psychological stance, a retreat that, couldn't it be seen as a kind of defense mechanism against relational vulnerability? A value inversion born from an inability or unwillingness to affirm the world as it actually is. The saint's position, human beings I do not love, love for human beings would kill me. Well, it can certainly be seen as reflecting an ascetic ideal. And the critique of this ideal is absolutely central to Nietzsche's broader philosophy, particularly in works like On the Genealogy of Morality. The saint, in many ways, embodies a form of piety that renounces the messy, imperfect world and its flawed humanity for a transcendent, distant other. While he's not presented as malevolent, not at all, his worldview is precisely what Zarathustra must differentiate himself from. This detachment, this almost tragic misanthropy born of disappointed love, is a significant problematic element. We must analyze it, not to endorse it for a moment, but to understand its internal coherence within its own framework. And, more importantly, why, for Nietzsche, it represents an outdated, ultimately life-denying stance. Zarathustra, then, interestingly, reframes his intention.
Why did I speak of love? I bring mankind a gift.
The concept of the gift, the Gabe, now moves dramatically to the fore. But the saint, he has a very different idea of what it means to give.
Give them nothing, said the saint.
Rather take something off them and help them to carry it. That will do them the most good, if only it does you good. And if you want to give to them, then give nothing more than alms, and make them beg for that too.
The saint's advice is deeply cynical, isn't it? Or perhaps, from his own weary perspective, starkly pragmatic. He suggests a form of giving that actually reinforces dependence. Almosen, alms, that must be begged for. Or at best, a kind of mutual unburdening. Zarathustra's reply is sharp, incisive, and defines his Gabe by precisely what it is not.
No, answered Zarathustra. I do not give alms. For that I am not poor enough.
Dazu bin ich nicht arm genug. What a powerful aphoristic statement. What could he possibly mean by not being poor enough to give alms? It suggests his gift is not mere material charity, not something stemming from pity or a sense of duty. No. Rather, it implies a gift of overflowing spiritual Reichtum, a profound richness, one that is potentially transformative, certainly demanding, and perhaps even dangerous. This is utterly unlike the conventional, often dependency-creating nature of alms. This hints at something profound, what some scholars, engaging with Nietzsche and thinkers like Derrida, call the paradox of the gift. That intricate tension inherent in a gift intended to foster autonomy and self-overcoming, which might nonetheless risk creating new, unforeseen forms of indebtedness or misunderstanding, if not perfectly calibrated. A razor's edge. The saint, however, just laughs. He's unconvinced, and he warns Zarathustra about how society views such outsiders.
Then see to it that they accept your treasures. They are mistrustful of hermits, Einsiedler, and do not believe that we come to give gifts. To them, our footsteps sound too lonely in the lanes. And if at night, lying in their beds, they hear a man walking outside, long before the sun rises, they probably ask themselves, "Where is the thief going?"
This truly highlights the theme of mistrust. The societal perception of the solitary figure, the hermit, the philosopher, as an outsider, perhaps even a threat, a thief in the night. The saint's advice is, therefore, blunt. Abandon the project.
Do not go to mankind and stay in the woods. Go even to the animals instead. Why do you not want to be like me, a bear among bears, a bird among birds?
He advocates for a return to solitude, or at least an engagement only with nature, powerfully reinforcing that central tension between solitude versus engagement. At this juncture, it's worth pausing to consider a fascinating interpretive tension that runs deep in Zarathustra scholarship. Is the saint merely an obsolete figure, a kind of straw man set up to represent an outdated piety that Zarathustra will easily overcome? Or, as some more nuanced readings suggest, drawing perhaps on archetypal psychology or a more cautionary hermeneutic, does he represent a form of perennial wisdom? Does his warning about humanity's inherent mistrust and the burdens of engagement contain a pragmatic, hard-won truth that Zarathustra, in his initial fiery zeal, might be overlooking? The text, brilliantly, allows for this ambiguity. It forces us, the readers, to weigh Zarathustra's passionate drive against the saint's accumulated, albeit world-weary experience. Which way does the scale tip? Or does it oscillate? Zarathustra, ever curious, asks.
And what does the saint do in the woods?
The saint describes his devotional practice.
I make songs and sing them, and when I make songs, I laugh, weep, and growl. Thus I praise God. With singing, weeping, laughing, and growling, I praise the God who is my God.
This is a vivid picture of traditional piety, isn't it? An embodied, deeply effective relationship with his God, elements often marginalized in conventional, coolly rationalist methodologies, but which Nietzsche, ironically, often values. He then turns the question back, quite directly.
But tell me, what do you bring us as a gift?
And instead of answering, Zarathustra makes an abrupt, almost startling departure.
What would I have to give you? But let me leave quickly before I take something from you.
And then they part.
The oldster and the man, laughing like two boys laugh.
Zarathustra's sudden fear of taking something from the saint. What are we to make of that? It's intriguing. Is it that his radical, perhaps shattering insight might utterly destroy the saint's carefully constructed piece? Or is it a fear that engaging further would somehow diminish his own resolve, or taint the purity of his gift before he has even fully articulated it to himself, let alone to the world? And their shared laughter, despite their profound, almost unbridgeable disagreement, that's a fascinating formal element. Does it suggest a fleeting, almost pre-conceptual human connection that transcends their vast doctrinal differences? Or perhaps, more unsettlingly, does it simply highlight the saints' profound, almost childlike obliviousness to the true chasm that yawns between them? The text leaves us to ponder. So, we've now heard the saints' perspective laid bare. Humans are imperfect. Love for them is painful. God is the proper, perfect object of devotion. Solitude is vastly preferable to engagement. And any gift to humanity will inevitably be met with suspicion and mistrust. Zarathustra, for his part, has affirmed his love for human beings and his resolute intention to bring a Gabe, a true gift, pointedly rejecting conventional charity. But crucially, he has not yet revealed the actual nature of this gift. The dialogue, while certainly not resulting in any kind of mutual understanding, has served its deeper purpose. Zarathustra's pivotal, world-shattering insight occurs in solitude after the dialogue. This, perhaps, is an implicit commentary on the limits of rational discourse, especially for conveying the most unsettling, paradigm-shifting truths. Now, alone, Zarathustra has a moment of truly profound realization. This, my friends, is the climax of the section, and it's delivered with characteristic Nietzschean force. The shift from external dialogue to Zarathustra's internal monologue, that itself formally underscores the deeply personal nature of this insight, and its unsuitability for direct communication to the unprepared. Like the saint, pause for a moment, consider the weight of the dialogue that has just transpired. What insight could possibly reframe this entire deeply charged encounter?
But when Zarathustra was alone, he spoke thus to his heart. Could it be possible? This old saint in his woods has not yet heard the news that God is dead.
This is it, the philosophical bombshell.
God is dead.
Or, in the stark, unyielding German, Gott ist tot. The finality of tot is so much starker, more absolute, than dying or absent. It signifies an event already accomplished, a cultural fact, done. And notice how Zarathustra frames this as a Neukit, news, something current that the saint simply hasn't heard. This emphasizes its status as a recent, world-altering event, whose earth-shattering implications are not yet universally grasped. This aphoristic pronouncement, delivered as an internal monologue, a sudden, almost blinding revelatory insight for Zarathustra regarding the saint's entire condition, is undeniably one of Nietzsche's most central and most challenging ideas. It's absolutely crucial to understand this not as a simple, fist-pounding atheistic declaration of God's non-existence. That's too easy, too superficial. No, for Nietzsche, it's a profound cultural, historical diagnosis. He's saying that the idea of the Christian God has ceased to be a credible, structuring force in Western civilization. The shared metaphysical framework that underpinned morality, meaning, and purpose for centuries has, in his view, crumbled. It's gone, leaving a vast, echoing vacuum. The saint, then, in his sincere, heartfelt piety, is living in a world whose very foundations, from Zarathustra's radical perspective, have already eroded beneath his feet. He simply has not yet heard the news. He's inhabiting a ghost world. This is precisely where we, as careful readers, must engage with this problematic statement responsibly. Using the tools of hermeneutics, we must interpret it within the vast, complex architecture of Nietzsche's broader philosophical project. And indeed, the scholarly reception and interpretation of God is dead has itself undergone a significant evolution. From its initial shocking impact, through existentialist appropriations focusing on human freedom and the awesome burden of responsibility, to post-structuralist readings emphasizing the decentering of meaning itself, and even influencing theological responses like death of God theology in the mid-20th century. Understanding this rich interpretive history helps us contextualize the ongoing, vibrant debate about its precise significance. Consider these angles. A Heideggerian lens might see Gottes Tod as signifying the dramatic culmination of Western metaphysics, the utter exhaustion of the onto-theoretical understanding of being, and the ominous onset of nihilism. The saint, from this view, represents a lingering, perhaps tragic, attachment to this metaphysical God, a mode of thinking being that Zarathustra now indicates is no longer tenable. A Deleuzian or post-structuralist reading, on the other hand, might focus on the collapse of a central organizing principle, a collapse that liberates difference and multiplicity. Zarathustra, then, embodies active forces, striving to create new values against the saint's essentially reactive, backward-looking forces. Existentialists like Sartre or Camus would undoubtedly emphasize the radical freedom and the terrifying responsibility this death creates for human beings to forge their own meaning, to sculpt their own essence from the void. And some, perhaps following a Straussian approach, might even see Zarathustra's private, internal realization as hinting at an esoteric teaching, a dangerous truth not meant for all ears, with the saint exemplifying the profound unpreparedness of many for such radical, foundation-shaking truths. Regardless of the specific interpretive school one leans towards, the core issue is about the loss of belief in God as an orienting, value-giving principle, and the profound, multifaceted consequences of this loss. The looming shadow of nihilism, yes, but also the absolute necessity and exhilarating opportunity for humanity to create entirely new values. Carl Jung, in his fascinating seminars on Zarathustra, viewed the death of God as a profound psychological event, the collapse of the dominant collective symbol. For Jung, this means the immense psychic energy once projected onto the God image is now free-floating, untethered. This creates both an immense opportunity for new meaning-making and, simultaneously, an immense danger of psychic disintegration or misdirection. The saint's utter unawareness starkly highlights just how deeply unconscious this monumental cultural shift can be for many. It's precisely because of these profound layers, cultural, metaphysical, psychological, ethical, that wrestling with God is dead remains one of the most formidable and enduring challenges in all of Nietzsche scholarship. It's a task requiring not only careful, meticulous textual work, but also a broad, encompassing intellectual humility. Zarathustra's stunning realization that the saint is oblivious to this death of God radically recontextualizes their entire preceding conversation. Suddenly, it all clicks into a new, unsettling focus. The saint's arguments for loving God and retreating from humanity are, from this stark new perspective, based on an obsolete, now hollow, premise. It clarifies, with blinding lucidity, why Zarathustra cannot simply offer alms or engage in traditional forms of piety. His gift must be something far more radical, something that cuts deeper. It must address this very death of God and its cataclysmic implications. His own transformation, then, is not just personal. It's deeply, inextricably tied to this epochal shift. His love for mankind now takes on a new, urgent meaning. It means helping humanity navigate this new, uncharted, godless landscape. This pronouncement also functions as a kind of performative act in the text itself. It aims to make this death a conscious, felt reality for the reader, compelling a response, forcing an engagement. And In doing so, it positions philosophy itself as a form of cultural diagnosis, perhaps even prophecy. And herein, surely, lies a profound contemporary relevance. The challenge of forging meaning, creating robust values, and sustaining communal bonds in a world where traditional certainties have visibly eroded continues to resonate powerfully in current philosophical, ethical, and societal debates. Can we not see that? Let's consider an alternative interpretation here. A slight nuance. Is the death of God a universal cultural fact, already fully accomplished? Or is it perhaps, at this precise moment in the narrative, a dawning awareness within Zarathustra himself of the full, terrifying implications of his own transformation? His surprise, could it be possible, suggests a fresh, almost shocking realization of just how out of step the prevailing consciousness, so perfectly represented by the saint, is with his own hard-won insight. His task, then, is not merely to announce a fait accompli, like a town crier. No, it's to articulate, embody, and live out the profound consequences of this monumental shift. This subtle point highlights a fascinating tension in Nietzsche's method. Zarathustra often speaks with prophetic, almost absolute authority. Yet Nietzsche's overarching philosophy champions perspectivism, the idea of multiple truths. How do we reconcile that? This brings us to another key methodological point: aphorism and revelatory insight. Nietzsche often uses these short, sharp, electrifying statements like, "God is dead," not as the labored conclusion of a lengthy deductive argument, but as a kind of philosophical event, a lightning strike that reconfigures our entire understanding in an instant. So, I ask you, what does this specific aphorism, "God is dead," mean to you in the context of this powerful encounter? How does it change your perception of the saint, of his piety, and crucially, of Zarathustra's daunting mission? This pronouncement also functions as an implicit, yet devastating, critique of the saint's entire worldview, revealing it as tragically, almost poignantly, anachronistic from Zarathustra's new vantage point. So, to synthesize this rich encounter, it has been absolutely crucial for Zarathustra. It has undeniably sharpened his understanding of his mission by forcing him to confront a worldview predicated on a belief system he now recognizes as utterly obsolete. The core concepts we've grappled with, transformation, the gift, love, and the tension between solitude versus engagement, have all been tested, put under pressure, and are visibly evolving before our eyes. His initial, perhaps somewhat naive, philanthropic impulse, "I love mankind, I bring a gift," is now grounded in a stark, almost terrifying realization: the death of God. And this changes everything. It makes his task infinitely more complex, infinitely more urgent. The saint's argument, which from his own premises, humans are imperfect, God is perfect and lovable, solitude is best, is deductively sound, is shown by Zarathustra's insight to be built on a foundation that, from Zarathustra's perspective, simply no longer holds. It's like a beautiful house built on sand that the tide has washed away. Zarathustra's own reasoning here is more abductive, isn't it? He's inferring from the encounter the best, most powerful explanation for the saint's profound detachment from the news. This dialogue, so rich with narrative depth and symbolic meaning, masterfully showcases Nietzsche's perspectivism and his decisive rejection of purely systematic, bloodless abstraction. He doesn't offer us a single, neatly packaged abstract truth, far from it. Rather, he unfolds complex philosophical problems through the dynamic interplay of characters and their evolving, often clashing, understandings. and he aims for an effective, a truly transformative impact on the reader. This text challenges traditional intellectual boundaries, doesn't it? It masterfully intertwines ethics, metaphysics, and aesthetics, blurring the lines between philosophy, literature, and even quasi-religious pronouncements. It's a wild ride. As we conclude today, we've seen Zarathustra's initial, confident resolve from Prologue 1 immediately and profoundly complicated. His fire is not just a warm, comforting glow. It's a potentially world-altering conflagration. His gift is not simple charity, not mere alms. It's the challenging, perhaps perilous wisdom of a world after the death of God. The methods we've observed today, narrative philosophy, dialogic engagement, the power of aphorism, and incisive critique, are not just stylistic choices for Nietzsche. They are absolutely integral to how he develops these profound philosophical themes. He presents philosophy itself as a lived art, a path of self-creation. Looking ahead to Prologue 3, Zarathustra will finally arrive in the first town. The burning question we must carry forward from today is this: how will this shattering realization that God is dead and that the old ways of piety are no longer viable, at least for those who hear this news, how will this shape his first actual attempt to address humanity face to face? What kind of reception will he find in the marketplace? And how on earth will he begin to articulate a message for a world that, much like the saint, may not yet have heard the news? Or, perhaps more frighteningly, a world that doesn't want to hear it? For next time, I want you to reflect deeply on these crucial questions. First, if the traditional source of values, God, is declared dead, what are the immediate, pressing ethical and existential challenges that Zarathustra, and by extension all of humanity, must now confront? Think about the foundations of morality. Second, considering the saint's profound obliviousness and Zarathustra's internal, almost private realization of God is dead, what does this entire encounter suggest about the very communicability of radical philosophical insight? Is it even possible? And how does Nietzsche's unique literary form attempt to address this profound challenge? Third, finally, how does the God is dead pronouncement, understood as a cultural diagnosis, force a fundamental re-evaluation of what philosophy's role might even be in a post-metaphysical age? Does it imply a more legislative, a more active, a more transformative task for philosophy itself, as some intriguing metaphilosophical readings of Nietzsche suggest? Think about that. We have much more to uncover.